Part 3 of The Secret Behind Levitation. In his comprehensive study of shamanism across the world, Mircea Eliade found that many cultures used similar ceremonial techniques, often involving levitation, to initiate the would-be shaman into occult mysteries. This means that many shamanic cultures regard levitation as an innate human ability that can be manifested through specific rituals, writes Eliade. The initiatory ascent gives the future magician the power to fly. It is difficult to determine if all magicians who believe that they can travel through the air have had an ecstatic experience or been exposed to a ritual ascent during the period of apprenticeship, that is, as they obtain their magical power of flight as a result of an initiation or an ecstatic experience that announced their shamanic vocation. It may be supposed that at least some of them did obtain this magical power after and through an initiation. Many of the documents attesting the ability of shamans and sorcerers to fly fail to state how these powers were obtained. But it is quite possible that this silence is due to the incompleteness of our sources. However this may be, in many cases, shamanic vocation or initiation is directly connected with an ascent to the sky. Eliade's research reveals that levitation can be achieved using different methods. The power of flight, as we have seen, can be obtained in many ways: shamanic trance, mystical ecstasy, magical techniques, but also be a severe psychological discipline, such as the yoga of Patanjali, the various asceticism, by vigorous asceticism, as in Buddhism, or by alchemical practices. This variety in techniques doubtlessly corresponds to a variety in experiences, and also, though in lesser degree, to different ideologies. For example, abduction by spirits, magical and mystical ascent, etc. But all these techniques and mythologies have a common characteristic: the importance accorded to the ability to fly through the air. Field researcher Dushan Gersi, who witnessed multiple levitation events in various primitive cultures, writes, "It's interesting to note that I witnessed these levitation phenomena with the believers. They were in a state other than the normal one, that is, when they were meditating in a trance or in a possession state. Perhaps the intoxication brought on by meditation, by the trance state, or by possession helps to shut down the negative beliefs, those that keep us from levitating, for instance, and liberates the unconsciousness. The unconscious, which gives the power to perform such feats. And liberates the unconscious, which gives the power to perform such feats." Dr. Fouguerin, a French doctor of science and medicine, theorized that levitation was caused by a bioelectric force emitted from the body. It is not possible that the subject gifted with electricity, standing on their tiptoes on the floor and producing a very intense discharge of electric fluid through their toes, to elevate himself above the ground? Is it not possible for this effect to take place if the subject is in ecstasy, allow his fluid to escape at that time through his toes or bent knees? Writes and adds, who witnessed a levitation. Levitation in the air, to the contempt of the law of gravitation proved by modern science, is able to be explained by the theory of universal attraction and repulsion. If the mediums are raised up, it's because they are, for a time, rendered completely positive. There is in each human organism, as in the rest of nature, two magnetisms, positive and negative. What we call life is the result of the constant action and reaction of these positive and negative forces, the cessation or the equilibrium of these forces. This is death. But this observation doesn't apply to the yogis. The occultists are able to produce at will this equilibrium in their physical nature without dying. If we are totally negative, we are rooted to the ground like trees. If we are completely positive, we are not able to stay on the ground for a single moment, but are always repulsed from the surface because the positive forces repulse. Because our will power isn't developed, and as a consequence also not as strong as an occultist's, we are not able to levitate ourselves. Author William Q. Judge writes, levitation of the body in apparent defiance of gravity is a thing to be done with ease when the process is completely mastered. It contravenes no law. Gravitation is only half of a law. The Oriental sage admits gravity as if one wishes to adopt the term, but the real term is attraction, the other half of the law being expressed by the word repulsion, and both being governed by the laws of electrical force. Weight and stability depend on polarity, and when the polarity of an object is altered in respect to the earth immediately underneath it, then the body may rise. The human body will rise in the air, unsupported like a bird, when its polarity is thus changed. Ramtha, as channeled by J.Z. Knight, explains that with practice, a person can levitate by controlling their fields or bands of energy in their body, says Ramtha. When an entity levitates, it's because they have changed the resonant field of their bands. They are actually encased in a bubble of frequency that is greater than the time-space dimension that they are presently existing in. The field is anti-gravity because it is not resonating at B-flat gravity any longer. It is resonating at a higher harmonic, thereby consuming gravity, thereby allowing the entity to lift off. It is actually eating the B-flat fields around you and taking them into a vortex of energy which allows anti-gravity to exist, which brings upon the state of levitation. Colonel Albert Rochus completed the first truly comprehensive study of levitation. He believed that it had different causes, but seemed to involve an electrical force. It is strongly probable that the phenomenon is very complex and that it isn't always from the same cause. Some of the experiments from the end of the last century seem to prove that electricity diminishes the weight of bodies. He believed that mediumistic levitation, however, was attributed to the action of intelligent and invisible entities, elementals, angels, or demons. He wrote that ecstatic levitation was caused by prolonged meditation on God, which allowed the soul to become increasingly powerful. This eventually translated into supernatural abilities, writes Rochus. They are produced mainly in ecstasy and at diverse degrees. There are a few ecstatics who haven't been observed, at one time or another in their raptures, to be lifted above the ground, suspended in the air without support, floating sometimes and balancing themselves on the slightest breath. Colin Wilson echoes most modern researchers, believing that levitation is an innate talent potentially available to anyone. After examining the accounts of Cupertino, Holmes, Schneider, and others, he wrote, Friar Joseph flew. There can be no possible doubt about that. It would be pointless to ask how do we explain it, because we cannot even make a start on understanding the mechanisms involved. Home attributed his flights to spirits rather than his own powers. Friar Joseph's flights were undoubtedly produced by his own powers. The most sensible attitude is to assume that all human beings are potentially capable of flying. Whether the forces that made St. Joseph float like a balloon were telekinetic, or whether St. Joseph and Willie Schneider somehow provided the energy for extra-human agencies, is a matter upon which no opinion can be ventured at this stage. But that these forces are potentially in the control of every human being, surely there can be no doubt. According to Eastern yogic tradition, levitation is in fact an ability available to all human beings. During his expeditions through India and Tibet, Baird T. Spalding not only witnessed levitating yogis, he was given an explanation by Master Puraji, who also displayed the ability of levitation. Says Master Puraji, there are a number among you who have never witnessed body levitation, and they wonder. Let me say this about it. It is a power which belongs to man. We look upon it as knowledge of ancient yoga. Many people have used it in the past, and it was not looked upon as miraculous. Gautama Buddha visited many distant places through the levitation of his physical body. Thousands of people I have seen that have made the accomplishment, and there are much greater evidences of power that these people that you will And there are much greater evidences of power than these that you will see, evidences of a great irresistible force that can be used to move mountains when brought under the complete control. Unfortunately, none of these insights reveal the true mechanics behind the phenomena. According to Eastern philosophy, the universe is made up of planes or dimensions, starting with the physical dimension, with each dimension becoming progressively finer. One of the ruling forces of the universe is consciousness or thought. In other words, our physical laws are in fact ruled by consciousness. The finer the dimension, the more easily it is manipulated by the power of thought. Under this model, the secret to levitation is found with the knowledge to manipulate consciousness to a degree where one can affect matter on the physical plane. All of this becomes much clearer when we examine who the levitators are and why their levitations occurred. Clearly, levitation is connected to spirituality. In the vast majority of cases, levitators are described as being deeply spiritual. The great majority claim to have experiences of many different kinds of psychic events, not just levitation, many different kinds of psychic events, not just levitation. However, the real question remains, what causes levitation? Can it be duplicated by others? What are the actual mechanics behind the phenomenon? This book focuses only on the phenomenon of levitation. However, throughout my research, it has been impossible to ignore a wide variety of other paranormal phenomena that seem to be intrinsically connected to levitation. These include out-of-body experiences, ghosts, poltergeists, mediums, possessions, channeling, telekinesis, healing, supernatural strength, teleportation, anedia, levitation, bilocation, incombustibility. The list goes on. The vast majority of those who levitate have experienced many other paranormal events of these kinds. While I prefer not to explore tangential subjects in the book about levitation, it seems unavoidable to explain. To explain levitation, we need to understand the other phenomena that come with it, in particular, the astral body. The astral body and levitation. A disproportional large number of levitators also report out-of-body experiences. Robert Monroe is one example. Prior to his 2 levitations, he had hundreds of out-of-body experiences. The same is true for Saint Teresa of Avila. She, in her autobiography, she recorded numerous out-of-body experiences. In fact, she describes them as being very similar to levitations, the only difference being that with levitations, her body rises up following her astral body. St. John Bosco reported out-of-body experiences. Christina the Astonishing's levitations began as a result of a near-death out-of-body experience. Many projectors report feeling like they should be able to fly. Patricia Garfield and Sylvan Muldoon, both accomplished astral projectors, also reported that following their OBEs, they felt like they should be able to physically levitate. Uram and Marilyn Hughes actually did. The theory behind out-of-body experiences is that each person has an astral body. We all have out-of-body experiences every night as we sleep. However, most do not remember them. By transferring and maintaining waking consciousness in the dream state, one is able to recall out-of-body experiences. Does the astral travel provoke levitation, and if so, how? For most people, the dominant body is the physical body. This is where they spend most of their time in waking consciousness. However, repeated out-of-body travel apparently strengthens the astral body. The more out-of-body experiences one has, the stronger the astral body becomes. Just as one can exercise the physical body and make it stronger, the same holds true for the astral body. Could it be that the astral body, once it becomes sufficiently strengthened by the repeat use, becomes the dominant body? Once this threshold is reached, then it should be easy for the astral body to take over the physical body. Under this theory, then, levitation would simply be an out-of-body experience during which the astral body remains, in coincidence, coincidence with the physical body lifting it up. The law of gravitation is never really defied. Instead, the human organism itself becomes transformed into or encompassed by an energetic field originating from the astral plane, with the atoms vibrating at a much higher frequency. This is actually the basic theory of most modern researchers. As Madame Blavatsky writes, the adepts of the Hermetic science explain the levitation of their own bodies by saying that the thought is so intently fixed on a point above them that when the body is thoroughly imbued with the astral influence, it follows the mental aspiration and rises into the air. Researcher Lynn Picknett has reached a similar conclusion as she writes, perhaps those rare beings who find themselves levitating physically are subconsciously releasing the trigger and allowing an enormous surge of energy used in OBEs to take hold of their bodies and go up. They go briefly and then up they go, writes Charles and Jordan. Whether levitation is intentionally or spontaneous, the mechanics are the same. Intentional or spontaneous. When the spirit takes flight, the body may somehow follow. After investigating a wide cross-section of accounts, world-renowned psychic Sylvia Brown concludes, what lies at the heart of levitation, in my opinion, are astral projection and or astral travel, physically manifested through either a deliberate or spontaneous disbursement of the body's cellular energy. Parapsychologist D. Scott Rogo speculates that the body may become weightless as the result of an unknown biogravitational force, which is somehow created from the human organism, writes Rogo. The notion that levitation occurs when a psychic field is created around a body or affects the physical area surrounding the levitator is an intriguing possibility. The mind of the levitator somehow physically alters the area about him so that the laws of gravity are temporarily suspended and weightlessness ensues. A theory of levitation is that some invisible force actually leavens the body when the miracle takes place. Levant leaves the body when the miracle takes place and produces a psychic support system. Yeah, we're just gonna do another part there.